Okay, today is Friday the 28th of July. This is going to be a monthly garden update. We're going to go ahead and start in the pumpkin patch area. All these pumpkins that I've started in this area came from the compost from pumpkins that we had actually bought for Halloween in October of last year. So it's pretty impressive that we were able to take a lot of those pumpkins, throw in the compost, and then they just started growing. So in this corner right here, I can show you we have some of those smaller little white ones. These are going to be like your ornamental, very decorative pumpkins. They're not really the best for eating, but I do have a couple of these. So we have these white ones. We have some of these regular pumpkins which are starting to grow and actually flower on the vine still in July, which is really cool. It is really hot though. Right here we do have a volunteer sunflower. So that guy is going to go ahead and grow, and the pumpkin did attach itself to it. We have our pear tree again putting off a really good fruit. There's quite a lot, and this year we do have the shade cloth over kind of everything, so it's helping out on this side a lot. Right here we have another one of those ornamental pumpkins. It's the dark green with like the splotchiness, which is doing really good. Our third type is this little golden yellow one, which I think I like the most. Well, I really like them all, but this one's really cool. And then over here we have our sunflowers, and this one right here I think is the tallest, biggest sunflower that I've ever grown. I'm gonna assume that it's probably about 8 feet, 8.5 feet. I would show you the bloom, but it's just too tall and I don't really want to mess with the shade cloth, so I'll just leave it there. And swinging over here we have the peach trees that we were growing. These are doing really good in this spot. I got kind of lazy. I didn't want to put an irrigation system to them, so I just have the sprinkler watering these guys, and they're doing really well. They could use a little bit more fertilizer, but they're doing fine for now. Right here we have our other side of the pumpkin patch, which is throwing off a lot of growth. It does look a little sad right now, and that's just because this side of the yard does not have a shade cloth, but it's still producing a couple pumpkins. Some of them are starting to finally get some size. And if I go back towards the compost, this is the biggest one that I have currently. It's a nice bowling ball, small bowling ball sized pumpkin, so gonna let that guy continue to grow. And here's the compost. What I did this month is I upgraded to a pitchfork instead of using a shovel, just because using the shovel it takes a lot of effort to move a lot of the dirt, but if you use a pitchfork it'll help you aerate the compost so everything will actually break down correctly. Right here is the potato box, which is actually where I have one of the pumpkins growing out of. So that guy is starting to make his way to the lawn. And in here, again, stuff does look a little sad, but that's just because it's really, really hot. So I do have this sprayer, which is connected to the irrigation, which waters half of the potato box and half the compost, so it keeps the compost wet so it actually breaks down like I was mentioning. And then right here, we have another one of those ornamental pumpkins. So you can see we have one right here. This one's not going to make it though. It does have some damage on the side, but you can see we do have another one down there, a nice and big white one. And then it is sending off some more flowers, so we should get a couple good pumpkins out of that. Here we have some of the younger peach trees, which again could be doing better. I honestly should have just sold these when I had the chance. Now I'm kind of stuck with them because they're not really looking all that great. They could use some more fertilizer, and they could be up potted into something bigger. Kind of like the other peach trees. They're still in the tree containers, but they are getting watered and they are surviving. Coming back to the main garden, you guys can see that we do have some tomatoes that are starting to ripen. So you can see this guy right here. I did come in and I actually took a couple tomatoes already just because they were already fully ripened, and I didn't want any of the pests or any of the animals coming in and eating them. But like I said, you can see we have some good size fruit, size vegetables, and there are some newer tomatoes that are starting, so we should be able to harvest quite a lot. I think this year we're gonna harvest at least 80 tomatoes, which in years past I didn't have nearly as many plants and not nearly as good a soil. We also have the green beans. This is another thing that this year I've been successful in growing, so we'll be able to harvest a couple of these, and they are doing pretty good. And it's really cool to see how it actually trellised with the tomato plants. So I didn't have to do like a double trellis or anything crazy. I just let them kind of sprawl all over the place. But like I said, these tomatoes do have really good fruit sets. There is fruit, new tomatoes, old tomatoes, stuff is ripening, stuff is just starting to grow, so this is really nice to see. And I'm just going to leave this and see how long it'll set fruit. Right next to the tomatoes, we do have the bell peppers, which some of them are a little deformed, like this one. This one looks much more like a pancake, but we do have a couple of bell peppers that are starting to grow. Right next to them, we do have a pumpkin, another pumpkin. This is a transplant that just came from the compost, and it's doing really well. Like I said, it's starting to kind of vine out. And we have a couple other things that are starting to grow in the containers. I believe that's a grapefruit that, again, was from the compost soil. So when you actually recycle all your fruit, your vegetables and stuff, sometimes you just get some volunteer plants, and you know, you don't have to put in nearly as much effort to actually get those guys. Another thing we have is we have the avocados. These are some of the older avocado plants, and they are doing really, really good. I mean, some of these leaves are just extremely healthy. And this is an area, again, that is really kind of too compact. Everything's really close together, so you will get a little bit more pests. I have had a little bit of damage this year on the leaves. I mean, you can see some of them are chewed up, but they're not all that bad. And going to the ground, this is our little experiment that we had going with the tomatoes. I didn't want to trellis these. I just want to leave them on the ground, see what would happen, see if they did better or worse than the tomatoes that I'm actually trellising. And you can see that some of these tomatoes, again, have really good fruit set, are touching the ground, and there's not really a whole lot of disease that's happening. However, we do have some pests. So there has been a little bit of issues with rats and maybe a possum. I'm not too sure. I haven't seen a possum, but I'm 100% sure that it's a rat, and it's been taking kind of any of the fruit that touches the ground. So this area right here, it used to have about 4 to 5 tomatoes, and it would just keep eating them. So then I would just throw those away or put those in the compost to break down, just to be safe. And so I am trying to catch that little sucker, but we can see that we do have a ton of tomatoes still growing and still ripening, or at least starting to ripen on the ground, which is good. I wasn't expecting it to do this good, but it makes sense to trellis these if you really want to have the most harvest as much as possible. Going back to the pepper plants, so all these guys right here in this front row, it's about like 6 or 7 jalapeno plants, and these guys are doing really, really good. If I take you over here, I mean, you can see just the coloration. They're very dark, they're very shiny. And like I said, I have quite a lot, and probably in this video I'll go ahead and I'll harvest a couple from this side, and then I'll harvest a couple from that side, and we'll see how many we get. Continuing on, going on to this side, we still have, again, a lot of tomatoes. Like I said, this year has been an amazing year for tomatoes. We have quite a lot of fruit set everywhere. Stuff is starting to ripen. It's looking really good. This is one of our peach trees that we actually transplanted out. It's doing really good. It's actually growing a lot faster than some of the ones that are in the grass, of course, just because I've actually put fertilizer and minerals and vitamins, stuff like that, all the good stuff in this soil, so it actually has something to draw those from instead of being in such a small container. We do have some other volunteers that are starting in some of these containers, like this guy. This is a potato, which is a little annoying because I want to keep the potatoes in one area of the garden, but if you don't collect all the tomatoes, they end up just growing wherever they're at. Right here, I have a bay tree and another bay tree. These guys are starting to put off more leaves, and they're looking really, really healthy, really good. And there's another volunteer pepper plant right there next to the aloe. I don't expect to really get anything off this plant, but I'm just letting it grow to see what I can get, if there is any peppers that come off, because I have no clue what kind of pepper it is. It could be a habanero, it could be a jalapeno, who knows. So we're just being kind of having an experiment to see what happens with that one. Right here we have the yarrow. This is the flower head that was in the last video. You can see that the flowers have already bloomed, and there is pretty much going to be just some seed production right here. And then here is a new flower head that started, so we'll get some seeds off that guy. And then if I get around to this side, I can show you that we have more jalapenos starting on these guys. There's a couple that are just getting started. Let me zoom in here real quick, that are starting on this plant. And this is, again, another volunteer pumpkin. You can see that the vines near the base are kind of ugly, but if you follow the vine out, we have really good healthy leaves, still super dark in color. They're not really getting eaten up by any of the pests, and they are starting to flower, so we should be able to get some pumpkins off this guy as well. Right next to it we have the pomegranates. which are doing pretty good. They're growing really well again. I guess it's just the soil combination. I've done a lot of soil improvement this year, and so everything is growing really well. Again, this is very overcrowded. I just threw like 100 seeds in here and just let's see what happens. So it's kind of a cool experiment. Right next to the pomegranates, we have the strawberry plant again, which is throwing off a whole bunch of strawberries. In years past, it's never put off this many continuously, and so we're getting a lot that are starting to ripen, and we're getting some brand new ones, as you can tell by the white color. And there are a couple flower heads that are being thrown out, which will produce some more strawberries. But right next door, it also has some more bell peppers. So again, these are some of the biggest bell peppers ever grown, and some of the best looking bell peppers, I should say. So if we actually kind of scooch into this crowded little space, you can see this bell pepper right here. This is the biggest bell pepper I've ever grown. It's huge. It's looking really good, really healthy. There's almost no blemishes, and it kind of looks like a perfect little bell pepper. So in this container, it probably needs a little bit more water because in the later hours of the afternoon, it gets a lot of sun. So it probably just isn't enough water, so it's been dropping some fruit, but it still has a little bit of bell peppers here and there, so that's really cool. We'll be able to harvest all that stuff. To end the video, we're going to go ahead and get started on this shelf area. This is an area that needs either a lot of shade or a lot of water, and so we have some of our younger avocado trees which are starting. You can see this is a monoembryonic because it only has one shoot. This one is polyembryonic because it has two different shoots coming up, so you could potentially separate these and have two different trees, which is really exciting. We have our our red Caribbean papaya trees, and unfortunately the rest of them pretty much died or dried up. These guys are doing really good in the shade and the high humidity. They are starting to throw off some new leaves, so we'll see if we get any kind of production or any growth in terms of its height within the next couple of weeks. But I have to be very careful with these, since these are my only two that were actually I was able to grow this season. So going up the shelf, this is a cucumber that I started. I know it is kind of late in July, but I am excited to see if I can potentially get this trellised where the tomatoes are and have this thing actually give me some cucumbers. I have some pepper plants that are in this grow bag just to see what would happen. These plants have been neglected, so the fact that they're still alive is kind of surprising. Again, we have more avocado trees, polyembryonic to sprouts. This is the one in the previous video that I said had a lot of sun damage, and so it kind of just kind of cleaned off that wound, and then it threw off a sprout. And so this one has a new a new leaf that's coming out, and then we have another avocado with a whole bunch of leaves. Another avocado in here that has a polyembryonic sending off multiple shoots, looking really healthy. And then we have another one that's starting to grow out from the soil, so that's really exciting. And then to end the video, this is the mint plant. Again, I think it needs a little bit more fertilizer, and it has been in the sun, so it doesn't look as lush, but it's doing really good. But that's pretty much the end of this video. That's going to be the update for July. If you guys enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and I'll catch you in the next one.